Meet me. Alright, welcome back, boys, to a very important video. Now, this is kind of deceptive because from the Awaken announcement, they said there was going to be a dev note post, and one of you guys pointed that out to me, but I missed it because the name is horrible. It's just called World Arena Conviction Season Infographic. So I thought it was just going to be a picture, like an infographic, but it's actually a huge, long post going into their plans for the future and stuff. So if you guys missed it like me, you can check it out, or we're going to read it together anyway. But you guys know me, I do tend to skip stuff because I want to be respectful of your time. But before we start, I do want to say one thing because I keep getting this comment in all my videos. I know I've been complaining about the PvP and people are always saying things like, what about the people who don't care about PvP? We don't care about PvP. Why are you being so negative? Guys, that's like going to Fox News and expecting to hear good things about Joe Biden. If you're a foreigner, you might not know what that means, but the point is, I've always been a channel about PvP. I have never once in this channel said I cared about artwork or the story or anything PvE related in the slightest. So if you think I'm not going to cater to PvP discussion, you are in the wrong place. You don't have to agree with me. That's fine if you don't like PvP and you only want to do PvE stuff. That's all fine, but I'm just telling you straight up, you are in the wrong place. That is what matters to me. That is probably what matters to the majority of my subscribers. And it doesn't mean you have to be a legend player. It just means that your goal one day is to step into RTA and be good. If you have no desire to do RTA at all, 99% of my content should be meaningless to you and unsubscribe. Because even all my hero reviews are tailored around RTA performance. There's plenty of content creators for Epic 7. The ones that suck at RTA don't do RTA. You can subscribe to them instead. So with that out of the way, let's go into this, because this is actually more important to me than the Awaken announcement. Because again, as a PvPer, I want to know what Smilegate or Super Creative has in store for the PvP meta. I don't care about the new MLs. I don't care about the art. The art means nothing to me. So first, they kind of go over the numbers. The numbers themselves are really not that important. Obviously, the season's over, but it is very interesting. But it does show something very important. Basically, the most important thing about all these charts is that it proves, and honestly they've done this in the past as well, but it proves that they're looking at data to kind of assess balance. And that's very important. So right off the bat, we get a number of top 20 pre-bans. You might be confused by seeing Belian number 1. All stages, it means through the whole season. Remember, Conquer Lilius didn't exist in the earliest part of the season, so these numbers are kind of skewed. But you're going to see that they actually break it out into tiers of the season. So early in the season, middle of the season, late in the season. Why do they do this? Well, what they're trying to show is that their balancing efforts are working, right? Because what did they say was the beginning of the problem? And even the community says AOL, right? So they're trying to show us that they understood that AOL was a problem. They didn't nerf anything, they didn't nerf AOL, but they're trying to prove to us that through releasing new heroes, they were essentially able to get her pre-ban rate down, which essentially to them, the data is showing that she's nowhere near as oppressive as she was earlier in the season because half as many people want to get rid of her before the draft starts. So they're right in that. They were able to lower her pick rate. They did succeed in that, right? But what's the problem? Part of the reason they did that was releasing something equally broken, if not more broken, and having that pick rate go astronomical. Like you went from a 50% pre-ban AOL to a 56% pre-ban Conquer Lilius. And they're saying that later on it went down all the way down to 35.3%. I think they referenced the release of Pyrrha with this. They're saying Pyrrha has kind of stopped this. So this has validity and criticisms, right? So they're right. Like these numbers are much better looking than these numbers and these numbers, right? They kind of flattened it out. So statistically, to them, they might feel like they're doing a good job. It still means that, what does this mean? the vast majority of the time, these same three heroes are banned every time, right? So it's still not particularly great, but it's better. Nothing is in the 50s at the late stage of the season, according to them. But the problem is that to accomplish this without nerfs, they're releasing units that are equally busted and also pre-banned all the time, right? Because they're saying in the beginning, look, there's barely any Conquer Lily. She just came out, and there's barely any mediated character. Is this even accurate? These numbers are kind of skewed because I can't tell when they got buffed. But then they just kind of skyrocket to the top, right? So you didn't really fix the problem. You just distributed the problem to a different hero. But yes, I do agree that that is better. It is better if there's 5 broken heroes than 1 broken hero, right? So I have to concede that what their philosophy is does work to an extent. If your philosophy is simply to balance out the number of broken heroes, but it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good, especially for the players who don't have the mediator character. What was the big complaint about him? They buffed the crap out of him, and they didn't have a banner for him. So if you skipped him, and guess what? A lot of players skipped Kekwarrick because he was garbage on release. You were kind of just screwed, right? At least APOC Ravi, when they buffed it, they kind of gave you that banner and said, she's broken as hell now. If you have the Mystics, pick her up. Although, again, it didn't help you if you didn't have the Mystics. But you gotta give them credit where it's due. Their philosophy does work in terms of evening out pre-ban numbers. But I think most players can agree that they still didn't really like it. It still wasn't right. But it is good to see that. The important thing take away from this is their balancing is based on numbers. And I think that should be comforting and what we should give them credit for. They are looking at this to figure out what's too oppressive and what needs to be toned down a bit. I don't agree with the philosophy that the only way to tone things down is to release something so broken that it neuters them, and that's how you balance it out, but we don't need to go too much more into that. So each of these things have a little blurb about it, but I don't want to sit here reading it out loud with you guys. So you can find this on the Stove website, to go ahead and read it in detail if you want. So they talked about pre-bans, now they talk about first pick. So no surprise here. I made that video a while ago, got a lot of views, where I said Conquer Lilius is a disaster, and I said literally every match is going to be she's first picked or pre-banned, and what do you know? Conquer Lilius first pick by far, because they released a hero where there's literally never any reason not to first pick her. They're trying to change that by, giving Celine buffs and, all these non-attack countering things. But yeah, it still is what it is. She's still extremely strong. It's funny because you see how fast the first picks drop off, right? You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Really, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heroes that are first picked more than 5% of the time. And everything else, there's 2 heroes just under 5. There's a 2.5, 1.3, and then you just go right down the drain. Everything else is pretty much unpickable first, right? So it's kind of funny just to see that how the meta is basically saying if you don't have these heroes, you're donezo. It's basically what it means, right? This I thought was kind of interesting. I really didn't play in this season at all. I was super burnt out. But yeah, you kind of see where a lot of heroes have fallen off. Where's FCC here? Is FCC? Oh, no. First pick 9.3, first pick 20. You kind of see how the meta is shifting and how certain heroes go from, very dominant to kind of not picked at all. Although this is also first pick, so it's kind of skewed. No one was going to first pick some of these heroes back then. Who the hell was first picking Watcher Shuri? That's much bigger for Watcher Shuri than I thought. But anyways, no surprise. Let's see. These numbers I thought were deceptive because to first pick something, you have to be able to get it through, and it has to not be pre-banned. So I think Conqueror Lilius, it says 38.3%, and I think it's even more. It's just the fact that she was pre-banned so much that you couldn't actually ever pick her. So if you played RTA like the first week of this, I tried to do a video of Conqueror Lilius in RTA. I literally could not pick her. It was impossible. I did like 15 matches and could not get her once. And the very few times did get to pick her, she got banned out at the end phase. So it's pretty hilarious. But yeah, basically, all these charts kind of just show you Conquer Lilies was busted as hell. Pick just includes, I guess, pretty much any of the picks, including their first picks. So basically, it's saying what heroes showed up in every single match. And again, really no surprises. Again, they break it down to all stage, early stage, mid stage, end stage. You're going to find that A Ravi is prevalent here. You got to remember these numbers are skewed because it seems like, oh wait, based on this, A Ravi's the most broken hero in the game, right? And no doubt, she's pretty broken. She's a broken hero for sure. But she was definitely not more contested than Conqueror Lilius. The difference between Conqueror Lilius and A Ravi here is that A Ravi was almost never a pre-ban. Very few people pre-banned A Ravi, whereas Conqueror Lilius was pre-banned 99% of the time. So you have to add the pre-ban rate to this, and then Conqueror Lilius easily overtakes APOC Ravi. But I think we can both agree both of those are pretty busted heroes, so yeah. So again, these are just numbers. It's not that important. It's just more... The key takeaway is Smilegate is looking at this. So we kind of knew this already from previous seasons. This is not the first season that they've done this, but it kind of goes to show you their balancing philosophy, right? These are the numbers they're looking at, and when certain numbers are too high, they're going to be looked to toning them down. But what they've said is they won't tone it down by nerfing the problem hero. They're going to do what they did with AOL. They're going to keep releasing heroes that counter the shit out of them and hope that this number goes down. Again, the problem with that is the counters end up being more oppressive than the problem they're trying to solve. The other problem, the big problem, is that even if that philosophy works, it takes too long. If AOL is a problem and they nerfed it and the problem solved, that can happen in one patch. To fix AOL by buffing other units and releasing new units, that takes a lot more time because the balance patches take a while, the new heroes take forever to implement. I mean, you guys know my stance on that. All right, let's move on. So yeah, I mean, this isn't really new. This has always been the case. Speed set was always extremely important. The importance of speed setup has increased. No, it hasn't. Everyone was always running speed since the beginning of time. Maybe Season 1 wasn't that important because everyone played that stupid stall meta. But even then, like having a fast Clurry and stuff was very important. Now this is where Smilegate is doing it right. Because I've been very critical of Smilegate recently. It is what it is. I think they've made a lot of screw-ups. But to be objective, you got to give them credit where credit's due. This is a very important thing, and let's just all agree that everyone who complained about kind of mistakes they made, that they're doing right by us here. I'm going to read this whole thing. Furthermore, even though the recently released hero Hwayoung has a controlling performance, she was released at the end of the season, causing confusion and disappointment to players. I am in that camp. She effed me pretty damn hard. We'll go more into that in a little bit. It is our big mistake to repeat the same mistake, considering that our players had given us opinions on a similar occasion when the previous collaboration was released. Starting from the next season, we will prevent this problem by restricting the use of new heroes and artifacts in World Arena for a certain period before season closing. We would like to express our gratitude to our players for their hard work this season. So let's talk about Hwayoung real quick. We all know she's really good, right? A lot of people are very salty about Hwayoung, especially like upper tier players. And it's not because she's broken. For the record, anyone who thinks that Hwayoung is not broken doesn't know a goddamn thing about RTA. Trying to play standard on the last day of RTA was dominated by Hwayoung. It was basically everyone just trying to get C. Lilius and Hwayoung. Hwayoung countered standard extremely hard. So if you were a player like me who liked to draft around like Apoc Ravi and Mediator Cowrick and stuff, this thing was incredibly, incredibly toxic. So she is super busted. I've heard people say she's not busted because she's not an ML, and it's just like, what does that have to do with anything? Her not being an ML makes her more accessible. It doesn't have any impact on whether or not she's busted. So if you want to make busted units not MLs, fine. I mean, who cares? It doesn't mean they're not busted. Rimuru's not an ML. He was pretty busted. Rem was not an ML. Amelia's not an ML. Well, no one said Amelia was, but Rem was considered pretty busted at the time. It doesn't matter if it's an ML or not. So I'm perfectly fine with making good heroes not MLs and making them accessible. But yeah, I mean, she's clearly pretty busted and is a problem hero. Do I need her to be nerfed? No, I don't really care. But, you know, it does tick me off when people claim that she's balanced. She's not balanced, guys. She is very busted. If everyone likes her and wants to keep her that way, fine. I mean, I'll abuse her too, but let's just all agree that that's not a normal hero. She does way too much. But anyways, the key thing to take away from this is the biggest problem with Hwayoung was actually her release date. For those of you who don't really care about the RTA seasons, like endgame players like the meta to be defined for at least like the last week or two, right? Because you've been playing the whole season to learn the meta, practice, learn, and it throws a wrench in it when they change it on the very last day. Now, the argument could be made is that, you know, players who adapt better will benefit from that. That's true. That's true. But it's still a dirty thing. Like that'd be like in the NBA Finals if they moved the 3-point line right before Game 7, assuming that it went to Game 7. That'd be a really dick move, right? It's like, why would you do that? Like, the players are used to playing by a certain set of rules. Don't change it on the last day. Like, change it in the middle of the season. You should really just change it at the start of the season, but that's not practical for Epic 7. But the point is, that's why players are pissed off. It felt dirty. Also, it felt like they were forcing players to buy on the last day to compete, because the problem was she turned out to be really good in meta-defining. So if you didn't have her and you tried to play standard on the last day, you were screwed. And I was the kind of player where I didn't realize how strong she was, got dumpstered by her on the last day, tried my best to build her on the last day, dumped a lot of gold gearing her, actually had to do her side story to try and get like molas and catalysts, and it was just a pain. And I was not able to plus 15 her. It was just very irritating. But the props that I want to give to Smilegate here, so that's the background of the problem. The props here is they are doing exactly here what the people who are complaining have been begging them to do, because I didn't watch the whole thing, but you guys kept sending me that Korean interview with Car 6 or whatever, where they explain like how that Q&A came about. And honestly, I still think it was kind of complaining and I didn't agree with all of it, but it did help understand the background. It's like 2.5 hours long. If you guys want to watch it, go to Car 6's channel. He's a great dude. But one thing did resonate with me, because the guy basically explained that like global thinks that Koreans are whining about literally everything and blah, blah, blah. But he kind of went to the background and it hit me, because he said that the reason that they were so pissed wasn't because of what happened. It was that they kept saying they were going to do something or tell them something in the next release, and then they kept on not telling them anything. So it was more that it was the broken promise that was pissing them off more than the situation, right? Because apparently they had some like green screen announcement where he got up and the guy basically said, "We apologize, we're going to tell you more next time." And apparently that appeased everyone, and the next time came and they didn't even talk about it. And that's when they got really pissed off. So I get it. It's kind of like when your promises are broken, you get pissed off. But this is what we wanted. Like, no more saying we're working on it. We're fixing something in the future. We're thinking about it. We hear you. Cut all that bullshit and just make a strong statement. And that's what they're doing here, right? They're saying they recognize that Hwayoung mistake. It won't happen again. This line is what that's saying. It won't happen again. Problem solved. In like 3 of my last 10 videos, I've complained about how they did the Hwayoung timing, and now they're assuring me that they're never going to do it again. And if they do it again, everyone can come to this post, highlight this sentence and say, "Smilegate, you effed up. You promised us. You can't do this. And they're making a very strong statement, and I appreciate that. And just for that, I'm going to give, like, if nothing else in this post existed, this alone would give it like a 9 out of 10 for me, because these are the kind of statements I'm looking for. A firm statement saying, we recognize a problem, and we're not going to bullshit you about saying we're looking at it in some meaningless platitude. They're just going to say, this is the problem, this is the solution. Done. Done. So thank you, Smilegate. I rescind all future complaints about that, because you have committed that you won't do it again. It's alright. Now we go into matchmaking. Basically, they explain some of the bugs in the matchmaking. Basically, I mean, you could read the whole thing. It carries over your MMR from the previous season, and it caused some interesting problems, especially if the previous season's MMR was higher than the current season's. Because then I think that might also be partially why certain players can climb so fast, and some end of season skyrocketing players, but it doesn't matter. Season's over, but they're working on it. Here they have some numbers. I'm trying to keep this video not too long. Key point here is the average legend player had around a high 50% win rate. Emperor players had like low 50s. I want to say I ended the season around this, like 57. And yeah, pretty interesting. Funny thing is, Europeans suck at Epic 7. Poor Europe. I'm curious how Japan does, actually, because Japan's newer than Europe, right? Like, how far behind is Europe? Is it just a timing thing? Probably. Emperor League, yeah, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. You guys can read that on your own. It's not surprising that Emperor Masters has the highest win rate, because a lot of good players will actually just slam it to get their rewards and stop. All right, so future improvements. Double pre-ban, we already know this, so that's not new. The main thing that's new here is this. So in the Awaken video, they said we're going to fix the balance issues by changing Battle Frenzy, and I was like, what the hell are they talking about? How are they going to do that? So this is what they're attempting. Two things. One, basically they're increasing the advantage of Elemental Advantage. Basically against the opposite element, you get a built-in proof. The problem is that it doesn't stack with other things, so it won't stack with like Adamant Shield or whatever, but fine. Although it is kind of, you know, in contrast with what they said previously, because somewhere up there they said that they want to bring Knights and Soul Weavers back, but if they're giving everyone built-in mitigation, it kind of devalues them a little bit. But I guess to be fair, most Knights run Aureus and not Adamant, so maybe it doesn't really matter. So this, we'll go back into that. Let's talk about number two. Number two, this I don't like, but basically they're giving everyone Sasha Athanes, right? Like that Watcher Shuri artifact, when you kill someone, it pushes up their whole team. It's a de facto buff to Cleave in Bruiser versus Bruiser. I mean, it's still meaningful, but I don't think it matters that much. Actually, I guess it's fine. Like I don't really know. Like, I think Cleave's struggled last season, so maybe they need a buff. But honestly, this is a really big buff. Built-in Sasha for every team. Like, Sasha is quite strong, actually, on a Cleave team, so whatever. But I think in Bruiser versus Bruiser, this does very little, if anything. So yeah, and this could have a big impact, but I'm not entirely sure. Like, there's a lot of balance issues, right? Like, let's use the example they love to point out, AOL. How does this change anything about AOL being broken? So if these are the only two ideas they have to fix balance, like, isn't it much easier to nerf AOL than to put in these two mechanics tested for 2 weeks that literally wouldn't have... How does this fix ML Lilius? How does this fix Mediator Cowrick? Like, I don't really get it. It fixes a secondary problem. A secondary problem is they made too many RGB heroes that ignore element advantage, right? Like Rimuru. And in the past, elements were very important. Like, counter-picking their elements was very important, but that got marginalized by heroes like Rimuru, who don't care what element you are. You pick a fire hero like a Charlotte, he'll one-shot it. So that's a problem that they are fixing. So it does kind of follow in line with their plan to make more heroes viable, but it doesn't address in any way how to deal with broken units. So all it does is increase hero variety, but none of this handles broken units in any way. This Battle Frenzy, I'm missing it. If you guys understand it, feel free to tell me, but I don't get it. This, they're just trying to reduce inflation. This doesn't really matter for competitive RTAs, but they're just increasing the starting MMR. And matchmaking, they're basically trying to make it not happen where silver players get matched up against legend players, because that does suck and it demoralizes lower ranked players who are just trying to learn. There's no reason for that to ever happen. They should be fighting similarly matched players, because honestly, fighting someone much better than you won't even teach you anything. It'll just teach you that RTA is unfair and make you quit the game. So ultimately, that's that. I don't want to talk too much longer about this because it's already 25 minutes. But I'm going to give this post I think they really could have talked more about. Again, they got to talk about nerfs. They got to bring that back on table. There's no easy way to fix balance if you're not going to be for nerfs. But nonetheless, I will commend them for this statement. This is the kind of statement we were all looking for. This paragraph alone, A+. A+. The rest of the post I'll give like a B-, but because this is so good, we'll give it a B+ overall. But I think this goes into a lot of details over the controversies that the Awaken announcement didn't really cover. You guys heard that my criticism in that video where I gave it an 8 out of 10 despite all the other amazing stuff because they didn't mention the controversy, and you guys said they were trying to keep it positive. I don't agree with that. It is what it is, but basically it's a big deal. They had to talk about it because that's a lot of players are banking on that announcement fixing all the problems, or at least showing an effort to fix the problems, and I guess they did show an effort. But anyways, what are your own thoughts on this? I'm very happy just because of this. In the future, people will know that when they're doing that last week legend grind, they're not going to get screwed over on the last day. We will have to wait and see if these changes do anything. I think they'll impact the meta for sure. I just don't think that they'll do anything about, fixing broken units. But anyways, share your own thoughts. I think it was very good overall. And yeah, till next time, boys. Peace out.